I woke up to the sound of metal hitting wood. At first, I thought it was a dream, maybe some late-night construction at the neighbor's house. But as the sound grew louder, a sinking feeling hit me in the pit of my stomach. Something wasn't right. I threw back the covers and ran to the window, and what I saw made my jaw drop. My bridge, my beautiful old wooden bridge that connected my driveway to the main road, was under attack. At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary morning. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and the quiet suburban streets looked peaceful. But there, in front of my eyes, was chaos. Men in bright orange vests were swinging sledgehammers at the wooden planks, while a loud, commanding voice barked orders like it was a military operation. And standing proudly in the middle of it all was her, HOA Karen. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I had lived in this neighborhood for over a decade, and my bridge had never caused a single problem. Sure, it was old, maybe a little creaky, but it was mine. Or at least that's what I thought. And yet here she was, pointing her finger at me, shouting about violations and unauthorized structures, as if she had the authority of a general commanding an army. I ran outside, my heart pounding, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice cracking. "This is my bridge, you can't do this." Karen didn't even flinch. Instead, she waved her clipboard in the air like it was a magic wand, as if that piece of paper gave her the power to destroy anything she wanted. "Rules are rules," she yelled back, her voice dripping with self-righteousness. "You knew about this. Everyone knows about this." I wanted to argue, to explain, to reason with her, but every word felt useless. She had that look in her eyes, the one that says, "I don't care what you think, I'm in charge." And the men with hammers didn't stop. Boards cracked, splinters flew, and dust filled the air. I could feel my chest tighten, a mix of panic and fury twisting inside me. I stepped closer, hoping someone would see the insanity of what was happening. "Do you even know who owns this bridge?" I shouted. My voice echoed across the street, but it didn't seem to reach her. She was deaf to reason, deaf to logic, deaf to everything except her own sense of authority. And then it hit me. What if I was wrong? What if somehow I really didn't own it? The thought made my stomach churn, but I pushed it aside. No, this was my property. My family had built this bridge years ago. We had memories here, summer barbecues, my daughter's first bicycle ride across it, the small celebrations every time we fixed a loose plank. And now, in the space of 10 minutes, it was being destroyed like it meant nothing. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. Tears wouldn't fix the bridge, and they certainly wouldn't stop the HOA from acting like they were above the law. So I did what anyone would do when faced with a situation that seemed impossible. I took a deep breath, clenched my fists, and vowed I wasn't going to let this slide. But there was a problem. I didn't know the first thing about fighting HOA Karen. She had been here for years, wielding power like it was a weapon, and now she had my bridge in her sights. I felt small, powerless, like David standing in front of Goliath, but I also knew one thing: I wasn't going to walk away, not this time. As I watched the boards break under the hammer, I felt a spark light up inside me. This wasn't just about a bridge anymore. It was about standing up for what was right, even when the odds were stacked against me. Even if it meant going head-to-head with a woman who believed rules were her personal playground. And that's when I realized something terrifying. I had no idea just how deep this battle was about to go, because what I thought was my bridge might not have been mine at all. I stepped onto the crumbling planks, my shoes trembling as they creaked under my weight. The smell of sawdust and freshly broken wood filled the air, and I could feel my blood pressure spiking with every swing of those hammers. HOA Karen turned to me with that smug, unshakable expression, like she had already won some invisible battle that I didn't even know existed. "Sir," she said, pointing her clipboard directly at me, "you are in violation of the HOA rules. This bridge is not permitted as it is." I couldn't believe my ears. "Not permitted," I shouted. "I've had this bridge for 15 years. This is my property." My voice cracked with frustration, but she didn't flinch. "I don't care," she snapped. "Rules are rules, and this bridge is an eyesore. It must be removed immediately." I wanted to argue to make her understand, but the words stuck in my throat. I glanced at the men swinging hammers. They were halfway through one of the support beams. Panic clawed at my chest. My bridge that held years of memories was disappearing in front of me. I ran forward, waving my arms desperately. "Stop, stop," I said, "you have no right to." But they didn't stop. One hammer came down dangerously close to my foot. I jumped back, my heart pounding so fast I thought it would explode. Sweat dripped down my forehead. My hands shook as I realized just how powerless I was. And yet, I couldn't just stand there. I couldn't let this happen without a fight. "Karen," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Do you even know who owns this bridge? Have you checked the property records?" She paused for a fraction of a second, enough time for a glimmer of doubt to cross her face. But she quickly recovered, smiling that infuriating, self-righteous smile. "I don't need to check. I am enforcing the rules. That's all that matters." My chest tightened. I felt a mix of fear, anger, and disbelief all at once. How could someone be so blind to logic, so blind to decency? The bridge wasn't just wood. It was a symbol of years of work, of family, of care. And now it was being destroyed like it was worthless. I remembered the letters they had sent me over the past months, each one more ridiculous than the last. Complaints about the paint, the railing height, the aesthetic inconsistency. I had laughed at them before, thinking they were absurd. But now, standing in the middle of a battlefield disguised as a quiet suburban street, I realized the absurdity had turned real and dangerous. I took a deep breath and tried reasoning one last time. "Karen, please, this is my property. I can't just let you destroy it. At least let me call the county, check the records, something." "Call the county," she scoffed. "Why would I wait for that? I know the rules and I know what needs to be done." Her words felt like a slap. Every instinct in me screamed that I needed to act to protect what was mine. But at the same time, a small voice in my head whispered, "What if I was wrong? What if this bridge wasn't mine at all?" Panic bubbled in my stomach. I looked at the bridge again. The boards were splintering faster now. I could see the gap widening beneath my feet, each plank giving way to the relentless force of hammers. Memories of my daughter riding her first bike across this bridge flashed in my mind. My family laughing, my friends teasing me about my private bridge. And now, it was all disappearing. Something inside me snapped. I turned to Karen, my hands shaking, eyes wide with determination. "I don't care what you think, this bridge stays. You will not destroy it without proof. Show me the papers, show me the rules, otherwise back off." Karen's smile faltered slightly. I could see the first hint of irritation in her eyes. But before she could respond, one of the workers swung a hammer dangerously close to the railing. A loud crack echoed, and I stumbled back, nearly falling into the gap. My heart leapt into my throat. At that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't just about a bridge anymore. It was about standing my ground, even when faced with someone who believed rules were their weapon. And maybe, just maybe, I was going to have to fight in a way I never expected. As I stepped back and wiped sweat from my brow, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. A small metal plate under one of the beams, partially covered in dirt. My hands shook as I cleared it. The words etched into the metal made my heart skip a beat. "Property of county." Everything froze. My bridge wasn't mine. And yet the HOA was tearing it apart like it belonged to them. I swallowed hard. My chest ached, a mix of fear, anger, and determination. This was bigger than I thought, much bigger, and I realized the fight was only just beginning. My hands were trembling as I stared at the metal plate, "Property of county." The words seemed to burn into my brain. I couldn't believe it. All this time, all these years, I had thought I owned the bridge. I had imagined it as mine, my little connection to the road, my safe passage to the outside world. And now, in a single, terrifying moment, everything changed. HOA Karen, of course, had no idea. She was still barking orders, waving her clipboard, acting like she had all the power in the world. I could see the determination in her eyes, the smug confidence of someone who believed that being loud and persistent was enough to win any battle. But the truth was mine now. Well, not exactly mine, but the truth was on my side. I took a deep breath and shouted, trying to cut through the chaos. "Karen, stop this bridge, it's county property." For a brief, magical second, she froze. Her mouth opened, her eyes narrowed. I thought I had finally pierced through her armor. But then, like a machine recalibrating, she scoffed and waved me off. "County property? I don't care. Rules are rules, and you're in violation." I felt a surge of panic and disbelief. How could she be so blind? The evidence was right there. I could touch it, feel it under my fingers, yet she refused to see. My chest tightened, and I felt a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. Our bridge, was being destroyed in front of me, and no one seemed to care about what was real. I realized I couldn't just stand there screaming. That wouldn't stop them. I needed proof. I needed confirmation. I had to act fast before the last of the support beams was gone. I sprinted back to my house, grabbed my laptop, and began digging through property records online. Every click felt like my heart was being pulled in two directions, fear on one side, hope on the other. And then finally I found it, the document. A scanned county record from decades ago. Clear as day, the bridge was indeed county property. My hands shook as I read the words aloud to myself, almost as if saying them would make them real. This can't be happening," I muttered, my voice barely a whisper. But deep down, I knew it was real. I had been right, at least partially, but the truth was more complicated than I ever imagined. This wasn't just a fight against HOA Karen. This was a fight against ignorance, arrogance, and stubbornness wrapped up in a sea of self-righteous rules. I rushed back outside, laptop in hand, ready to confront her again. But the sight that greeted me nearly made me collapse. The last few boards of my bridge were splintering under the relentless force of hammers. Dust and shards filled the air, scratching my arms and face as I ran forward. "Karen, stop, look at this," I yelled, holding up my laptop like a shield. The sunlight glinted off the screen, and for a moment I thought maybe she'd see the truth. Her eyes flickered toward the screen, but then she glanced away, shaking her head. "I don't care what that says. Rules are rules. This bridge is an eyesore. It has to go." I felt a knot of rage tighten in my chest. How could she be so blind, so stubborn? My voice cracked as I shouted, "It's county property. You are destroying government property. Do you even understand what that means?" For a split second, the hammers stopped. The men looked confused, glancing between me and Karen. I could see doubt creeping in their expressions. But Karen, oh Karen! She was still standing tall, clipboard raised like a weapon. "I enforce the rules," she said, her voice unwavering. I swallowed hard. I had to think fast. If they destroyed the bridge, there would be nothing left to fight for. I needed the county involved, but how fast could they act? Could they arrive before it was too late? My heart raced. The bridge was more than wood and nails. It was memories, family moments, small triumphs over time. And now, if I didn't act, it would vanish in minutes. I clenched my fists, taking in the chaos around me, the dust, the hammering, the shouting. And then I made a decision. I wasn't going to stand by, not anymore. I would call the county. I would involve anyone who could stop this madness. If Karen wanted a war, she was about to find out that I knew how to fight. As I reached for my phone, I noticed the first real crack in her composure. For the first time, her smugness wavered. Maybe it was the laptop screen, maybe it was the intensity in my voice, but something had shifted. The battle lines were drawn. The stage was set. And in that moment, I realized the fight wasn't just about a bridge. It was about standing up for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible, even when the other side refused to see the truth. The bridge may have been county property, but my fight was mine, and I wasn't backing down. By the time I dialed the county office, my heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. The sounds of hammering, yelling, and splintering wood were relentless behind me. Each swing of the hammers felt like a countdown, ticking closer to the moment when everything I had fought for would vanish. "County Public Works? Yes, hi, I need someone out here immediately. There's a bridge, it's under attack. It's county property, I think, but the HOA is tearing it down. Yes, tearing it down. Please, you have to send someone now." I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. I felt a wave of hope, but it was quickly drowned by reality. The HOA wasn't waiting. They were moving faster than I could even react. I ran outside, laptop clutched under my arm, and screamed at Karen. "Karen, the county is on their way. You cannot touch this bridge." Her response was exactly what I feared. A dismissive laugh, loud and cutting. "County? Ha, they won't get here in time. I enforce the rules, and I will see this bridge gone before anyone stops me." I froze for a moment, looking at her, looking at the men swinging hammers and feeling the weight of helplessness press down on me. Panic tried to creep in, but I swallowed it. I couldn't let fear take over. Not now. I sprinted toward the bridge again, waving my arms like a maniac, desperate to slow them down. Every swing of a hammer brought the planks closer to collapse. The dust stung my eyes, and I could barely breathe. My chest heaved as adrenaline surged through me. I felt my knees weaken, but I refused to step back. "Stop!" I screamed again, louder than ever. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "This bridge is county property. You're destroying government property. Someone could go to jail for this." For the first time, the hammering slowed. The workers looked at each other nervously, glancing at me and then at Karen. She waved them off impatiently, trying to maintain control, but I saw the flicker of doubt in their eyes. My heart skipped a beat. Maybe I had a chance. I raised my laptop high, pointing at the scanned county document. "Look, proof. It's county property. You can't touch it." Karen squinted, pretending not to see it, but the workers leaned in closer, murmuring among themselves. For a brief, glorious second, it felt like the tide might be turning. But Karen was relentless. "Rules are rules," she shouted, "and this bridge is a violation. I don't care what your papers say." I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms. My voice grew raw as I shouted, "You will wait for the county. You cannot destroy this bridge." Then something unexpected happened. One of the younger workers, a kid no older than 25, stopped mid-swing. His hammer hung in the air. He glanced at me, then at Karen, then back at me. Slowly, he lowered the hammer. Boss, maybe we should wait for them." Karen's face twisted with anger. "Don't question me," she barked, snapping at him. But the moment of hesitation had given me a sliver of hope. If the county arrived soon, this could all be over. I pulled out my phone again, calling the county to confirm. Yes, you need to hurry. They're actively destroying the bridge right now. Please, you have to come fast." As I hung up, I felt something shift. The air seemed charged with tension. Karen was fuming, but the workers were no longer as confident. I could see it in their movements. They hesitated, unsure whether to obey or listen to reason. And then a distant sound pierced through the chaos, a truck engine. I squinted down the street and saw the county vehicle turning the corner. Relief and fear collided inside me. Relief that help was finally arriving. Fear that the bridge might not survive until they got here. Karen's eyes narrowed as she spotted the vehicle. Her lips curled into that self-satisfied smirk she always wore before a confrontation. She straightened her clipboard like a shield, ready to defend her victory until the very end. My heart raced. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Every hammer swing, every shouted command, every second that ticked by was critical. I realized then, standing in the dust and splinters, that this was no longer just a battle over a bridge. This was a test of courage, of persistence, and of standing up to someone who refused to see the truth. And as the county truck drew closer, I felt a surge of determination unlike anything I had felt before. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, I felt the scales might finally tip in my favor. The next moments would decide everything. The bridge, my pride, and the authority of HOA Karen, all hanging by a thread. The rumble of the county truck echoed down the street like a promise of salvation. I could hardly believe my eyes as it turned the corner, lights flashing faintly in the morning sun. Relief washed over me, but it was tangled with fear. The bridge was barely standing. One more hammer strike from HOA Karen's crew, and it could all be over. I sprinted toward the approaching truck, waving my arms frantically. "Over here, please hurry, they're destroying the bridge." The county crew jumped out, hard hats gleaming, clipboards in hand. Their eyes widened as they took in the scene, the dust, the splintered wood, the frantic homeowner yelling in the middle of it all. "Whoa," one of them muttered. "We need to stop them now." I didn't need to be told twice. I ran toward Karen, blocking her path between the bridge and the approaching county officials. "Stop," I yelled. "They're here, you cannot touch this bridge." Karen's smug expression faltered for the first time. I could see the doubt flicker in her eyes just for a second before she straightened her back and attempted to regain control. "County, they're just a few people. They won't interfere with enforcement." One of the county workers stepped forward, voice firm. "Ma'am, this is county property. You have no authority to demolish it. Stop immediately." I felt a swell of relief, but it was mixed with adrenaline. My heart was racing, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the bridge. I wanted to run to the middle, scream, hug the bridge, anything to show that I wasn't giving up without a fight. Karen's face went red. "Rules are rules," she shouted. "You think some county workers change that? I enforce what's necessary." I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my voice steady. "No, you're breaking the law. This isn't your property. You're destroying government property, and you're going to be held accountable." The county crew moved quickly, positioning themselves around the bridge. One of them, an older man with a kind but firm demeanor, spoke directly to Karen. "This bridge belongs to the county. If it is damaged, your HOA could be responsible for repairs. You need to stop immediately." Karen's hands trembled slightly as she waved her clipboard. Her voice faltered. For the first time, she wasn't commanding, she was flustered. I took a deep breath, my voice shaking with both fear and triumph. "That's right. You can't just destroy what isn't yours. You thought you could bully me, bully everyone in this neighborhood, and no one would stop you. Well, now someone is stopping you." The workers glanced at each other nervously, and one of the younger men slowly lowered his hammer. Karen's attempts at authority were slipping through her fingers. She shouted again, but it was less forceful, more desperate. Rules still apply. You can't just." The county inspector held up a hand. "Enough, step back. The bridge stays. Repairs will be coordinated through the proper channels. This ends now." I felt my knees weaken, relief washing over me in a wave. The bridge was safe for the moment. My heart was still pounding like a drum, but the fear that had clawed at me for hours began to fade. I could see Karen, standing there, fists clenched, face red with fury and embarrassment, slowly realizing that she had lost this battle. I stepped forward, voice steady now, feeling a sense of vindication and triumph. Maybe now the neighborhood can see that this isn't about rules. This is about common sense, about fairness, about not letting people destroy something that isn't theirs. Karen glared at me, but she no longer had the power she thought she did. The county had drawn a clear line, and for the first time she couldn't just ignore it. I looked at the bridge, splintered but standing. Every plank that remained felt like a victory, every crack a reminder of how close we had come to losing it. My chest ached with exhaustion, but also with pride. This wasn't just a bridge anymore. It was proof. Proof that standing up, even when the other side refuses to listen, can make a difference. As the county crew began inspecting the damage, taking notes and snapping photos, I stepped back, letting out a shaky breath. I could feel my body trembling from adrenaline and relief. Neighbors had started to gather, whispering, pointing, some nodding at me with a mix of admiration and disbelief. And through it all, HOA Karen stood there, fuming silently, realizing that her authority had limits. Her self-righteousness had collided with reality, and reality had won. But even as I felt a sense of victory, a quiet voice in my head reminded me, this wasn't over. There would be letters, there would be arguments, and there would be more attempts at intimidation. But for now, the bridge was safe. And for now, that was enough. I wiped sweat and dust from my brow, taking a long look at the bridge, feeling every nail, every plank, every memory that it carried. It was still standing, battered but unbroken, just like me. Even after the county crew arrived, my nerves didn't calm. If anything, the tension skyrocketed. HOA Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. I could see it in her eyes, burning, relentless like a storm waiting to explode. She clenched her fists at her sides, muttering under her breath, clearly plotting her next move. I stayed on the bridge, gripping the railing tightly, every nerve in my body alert. My heart pounded not just from adrenaline, but from a strange mix of fear and determination. This bridge wasn't just wood and nails anymore. It had become a symbol of standing up against authority when authority refused to see reason. Karen approached slowly, her clipboard clutched like a weapon. "You think this changes anything?" she spat. "You think a few county workers can stop me? I enforce the rules, I enforce them all the time, and you'll see consequences for this." I swallowed hard, my chest tight. Consequences. What kind of consequences could she possibly imagine when the county had already drawn a clear line? Still, I felt a pang of worry. She was unpredictable, and I had learned over the years that unpredictable people often do unpredictable things. Consequences? I said, my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. You mean like trying to destroy something you don't own, because that's exactly what you're doing. Her eyes narrowed. She leaned closer, dangerously close. You think you're clever, you think you can stand here and act like a hero, but everyone knows the rules, everyone fears the HOA. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. You don't get it, I'm not afraid. Not of you, not of the rules, not of your threats. This bridge, it stays, and you're done here. The county has spoken. For a second, I saw her falter. That brief flicker of doubt in her eyes was satisfying, but it didn't last. She straightened, voice sharper now. You've only delayed the inevitable. This isn't over. You will pay for this defiance, and I will make sure the rest of the neighborhood knows exactly who's responsible for this little stunt. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I didn't back down. Bring it on, I said, my voice firm. I'm done standing by while you tear things apart for no reason. You can't bully people who know their rights. You can't bully people who stand up, and I will fight this, whatever it takes. She glared at me, her lips pressing into a tight line. The county officials were watching silently now, clearly aware of the tension, but letting it play out without intervening. Professional, calculating, waiting for the right moment. One of the younger HOA workers shifted nervously. He avoided Karen's gaze, looking at me instead, almost apologetically. I could feel the tide beginning to turn subtly. Even the people who had been blindly following Karen could sense the shift. The rules she thought were absolute were now being questioned. I stepped closer to the bridge's center, planting my feet firmly. This bridge isn't just boards and nails, it's memories, it's family, it's history. And it will survive because people like you cannot destroy what doesn't belong to them. Karen's expression twisted with frustration. She snapped her clipboard down onto a nearby post, leaving a loud thunk that echoed across the street. But it didn't intimidate me. Not anymore. I glanced at the county officials. One of them, the older man with a calm but authoritative voice, stepped forward. Ma'am, he said directly to Karen, you are not authorized to remove this bridge. Any further attempts could result in legal action against the HOA. Cease and desist immediately. Karen's jaw tightened. Her eyes darted to me, then to the bridge, then back at the county workers. I could see the realization dawning slowly. Her authority, her sense of invincibility, was finally being challenged in a way she hadn't anticipated. I felt a rush of satisfaction, but I also knew this wasn't the end. Karen was still standing there, furious and humiliated, plotting. But for the first time, she had no immediate weapon to act. The standoff was real, tense, but the bridge remained standing. And in that moment, I realized something profound. I had found my courage, the courage to fight for what's right even against someone who believed rules were their own personal weapon. The bridge wasn't just a structure anymore. It was a symbol of persistence, of standing tall even when the odds seem impossible. I tightened my grip on the railing, feeling every splinter and crack beneath my hands, and whispered to myself, almost like a promise, "This isn't over, but I will make sure you don't win." The sun was starting to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the street. The dust hung in the air like a curtain, masking the street in golden haze. HOA Karen was fuming. The county had taken its position, and I stood in the center of my bridge, ready for whatever came next. The real battle was only just beginning. The day had been a blur of dust, shouting, and adrenaline, but even as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, the battle wasn't over. HOA Karen had retreated for now, her fury simmering beneath the surface, but the tension in the neighborhood was palpable. Neighbors were gathering, whispering, pointing at the bridge, and I could feel the weight of every gaze. Some were sympathetic, some curious, and I knew a few were secretly glad that someone finally stood up to her. I was still catching my breath when my phone buzzed. A neighbor had sent me a video. Apparently, someone had filmed the morning chaos and uploaded it online. My heart skipped a beat as I watched the footage. Karen shouting, waving her clipboard, the workers tearing at the bridge, and me, arms flailing, screaming for her to stop. The dust, the splintered wood, the tension, it was all there, raw and unfiltered. Within minutes, the video had started to spread across social media. Comments poured in, some mocking Karen, some praising me, and others expressing disbelief at the audacity of the HOA. I felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. relief that people were seeing the truth, and anxiety because I knew Karen would not take this lightly. Sure enough, by the time the county officials finished inspecting the bridge and confirming that it was indeed county property, Karen was already mobilizing. I could see her from the bridge, packing angrily, phone pressed to her ear, probably calling lawyers, neighbors, anyone she could think of to regain some semblance of control. But something unexpected happened. As the video spread, the narrative began to shift the power dynamic. People weren't just talking about the bridge, they were talking about accountability, about standing up to bullying, about common sense. And for the first time, Karen's authority looked fragile, exposed for what it really was, arrogance and stubbornness hiding behind a clipboard. The county official, a calm, gray-haired man who had been quietly taking notes all day, approached me. "You did the right thing," he said. "Not just in standing up, but in documenting everything. This video will help hold the HOA accountable if they continue to act outside the law." I nodded, a wave of relief washing over me. My legs felt like jelly, but my chest was heavy with pride. The bridge had survived. The evidence was on my side. And now the court of public opinion was turning against Karen. By evening, the neighborhood buzzed with whispers. People came by, some offering words of support, others simply shaking their heads in disbelief at what had happened. I could see Karen through the windows of her house, probably realizing that this wasn't just a local dispute anymore. The story had gone viral in the neighborhood, and she was on the defensive. And then came the phone call that truly flipped everything. It was from the county office. "Ma'am, due to the damage caused to county property, the HOA could be held financially responsible. Further action may include fines or legal proceedings. We advise you to document everything and consult your own legal counsel." I sank into a chair, feeling the tension drain out of my body. After days of fear, anger, and stress, the first real victory had arrived. The bridge was still standing, and HOA Karen was now facing consequences she hadn't anticipated. But as the adrenaline faded, I felt something else: satisfaction. Not the gloating kind, but the quiet, steady satisfaction that comes from knowing you fought for what was right. Every swing of a hammer, every scream, every sleepless night worrying that my bridge could vanish, it had all led to this. The twist, the part I hadn't seen coming, was how public exposure had become my greatest ally. Karen had spent years believing that her authority was absolute, that her rules were unquestionable. But the moment the truth was seen by everyone, the moment her arrogance was caught on camera, her power crumbled. And I realized that sometimes justice doesn't come just from laws or officials. It comes from visibility, from showing the world the truth. I stood on my bridge as the sun set, golden light spilling across the boards, and felt a quiet victory settle over me. The neighborhood was watching, the county was on my side, and Karen was learning that even the most self-righteous can be humbled when the truth comes to light. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. There would be letters, there would be threats, there would be more attempts at intimidation. HOA Karen didn't know how to quit. But for now, the bridge stood. And with it, a symbol of persistence, courage, and the power of standing up for what's right, even when everyone else doubts you. As darkness fell, I whispered to myself, almost like a promise. The bridge survived, and next time, Karen will think twice before trying to destroy what isn't hers. The next morning, I woke up to an unusual quiet. The usual hum of construction and chaos from HOA Karen's so-called enforcement team was gone. I rubbed my eyes and stepped outside, and for the first time in days, I felt a strange sense of peace. The bridge, my bridge, or rather the county's bridge, was still standing. Sunlight sparkled on the wooden planks, dust settling like a gentle blanket. It looked almost serene, as if nothing had happened at all. But I knew better. I knew every crack, every splinter told the story of the past few days, the fear, the adrenaline, the anger, and the fight. It was a bridge that had survived not just the physical assault of hammers and nails, but the audacity of someone who thought rules were their personal weapon. I stepped onto the bridge slowly, letting my fingers trail along the rough wood. A small smile crept across my face. "We made it," I whispered, "you and me." By mid-morning, the county had already sent officials to document the damage and assess repairs. They took photos, made notes, and spoke with me about what had happened. I watched as Karen paced on the other side of the street, arms crossed, lips pressed into that tight line of hers, clearly fuming but powerless. The county had made it clear. The HOA could be held financially responsible if any further attempts were made to damage the bridge. It was almost poetic justice. For years, Karen had treated her HOA rules like a weapon, believing she could intimidate anyone who dared oppose her. But now, she had no authority, no power, and worst of all, she was being watched by everyone who had witnessed the chaos. The tables had turned. Neighbors began trickling outside, curious and cautious at first, then slowly approaching to offer congratulations. "I can't believe she actually tried to destroy it," one neighbor muttered, shaking his head. "And you stood your ground, that was incredible." I laughed a little awkwardly, dusting off my hands. "I didn't think I had much choice," I said. "Either I fought or watched it all collapse." Humor eased the tension in the air. People nodded and chuckled, sharing stories of HOA Karen's past antics, how she had tried similar enforcements in the neighborhood, only to be ignored or rebuffed. It was as if the bridge had become a symbol, not just of wood and nails, but of courage and resistance. And then on a whim, I pulled out a small wooden sign I had found in the garage. I painted it in bright colors, "County Bridge Protected." I planted it carefully at the entrance. The neighbors laughed, some snapping photos. It was silly, maybe even a little petty, but it felt satisfying. A small, final mark of victory. Karen watched from across the street, fuming silently. She couldn't step foot on the bridge, she couldn't touch it, and she couldn't argue with the county or the community that now openly supported me. Her power had evaporated, replaced by the quiet authority of truth and documentation. I stepped onto the bridge one last time, feeling the rough texture of the wood under my fingers. Every plank, every nail, every splinter had a story. And now the story had an ending, a victorious one. Not because I wanted to humiliate Karen, but because justice sometimes simply required patience, persistence, and standing up for what's right. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the wooden planks, I leaned on the railing and allowed myself a moment of reflection. The bridge had survived, I had survived, and maybe, just maybe, HOA Karen had learned a lesson she wouldn't forget. Humor bubbled up inside me again. I imagined her packing in her house, muttering to herself, "All that power, and for what? A bridge." I chuckled quietly. Life had a way of balancing itself out sometimes, in ways more satisfying than revenge or confrontation ever could. The county workers finished their inspection and waved as they drove off. The neighbors waved back, smiling, some giving thumbs up. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension leave my shoulders. The bridge was safe. The chaos was over, and for the first time in days, I could just breathe. Standing there, looking at the bridge bathed in the golden evening light, I whispered to myself, half in humor, half in solemnity, "We survived, little bridge, and no clipboard in the world can ever take you from us again." And with that, I finally felt the weight lift off my chest. The fight was over. The bridge remained, and so did the quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes courage and truth are stronger than rules enforced with arrogance. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one. The truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.